Myself, Dr. R.R. Sanap, Associate Professor, Department of Botany, Rao Bahadur Narayan Rao Baroke College, Rampur. Today, I am going to deliver the lecture on the classification of crude drugs. So, this is the part of syllabus of T.Y.B.Sc Botany, paper 4th. That is BO 344, and title of the paper is The Medicinal and Economic Botany. So here the crude drugs, so they are classified by different ways. Different methods are used for the classification of crude drugs. For example, the morphological classification, that is the crude drugs, they are classified on the basis of the external morphological characters of that drug. Then the alphabetical classification, that is crude drugs, they are classified on the basis of the alphabetical manner. So like that, the crude drugs, they are classified by the different ways. So today I am going to deliver the lecture on the classification of crude drugs. Particularly, the first one is the chemical classification. Chemical classification of crude drugs. So, if we see here, as the title indicates, here the crude drugs, they are classified on the basis of the chemical constituents or the active principles which are present in that crude drugs. On that basis, the crude drugs are classified. So we know that the crude drugs, they consist of the different types of the chemical constituents or active principles which causes the physiological action on the body, and thus later on it cures the diseases. So on the basis of that active principles or the chemical constituents, the crude drugs are classified, and so such type of classification, it is known as the chemical classification. For example, the glycosides. So the glycosides, they are present in this active principle is present in some crude drugs. So all types of the crude drugs which consist of the glycosides, they are grouped together and it is named as the glycoside, or it is kept under the title that is glycosides. For example, the digitalis, then the senna, licorice, and so on. So you see here, all these plants, they consist of the glycosides, chemical content or active principles, and so they are placed under the glycosides. Like the alkaloids. So all the drugs which consist of the alkaloids, that crude drugs, they are kept under the title that is the alkaloid. For example, ergot, cinchona, then the datura, hedathoda, and so on. So see here, all these plants, they consist of the active principle that is the alkaloids, different types of alkaloids, and so they are kept under the title that is the alkaloids. Then next is the tannins. So this tannin, which is so the plants which consist of the tannins, they are kept under this title. For example, the catechu, ashoka, then the acacia, Caesalpinia, and so on. So thus here, these plants which consist of the tannin, they are placed under the tannin. The next is the volatile oils. volatile oils. For example, the peppermint. So this peppermint, it consists of the volatile oil. That's why it has the specific smell or odor, which is used in the different types of the food agents and also the cosmetics. So they are placed under this volatile oil. The another is the clove, then the eucalyptus, then garlic, and so on. So thus here all such type of plants, their plant part, it may be of different type, maybe the leaf, maybe the tuber, or so on. All these are placed under the volatile oils. Then next is the lipids. So these lipids, so they consist of the castor oil. We know that it is obtained from the seeds of the plant, which is used as a laxative. Then the bee wax, then the lanolin, then cocoa butter, and so on. So thus here all such type of the lipids containing plant, they are placed under the lipids. The next is the carbohydrates. Plants which consists of the carbohydrates, so they are placed under the carbohydrate, like the agar, then the gaur gum, then the pectin, honey, and so on. Then resin and resin combinations. So here the resins and resin combinations, they are present in the cell, in the tissue of some plants, and such type of plants which consist of the resins which are grouped together and they are kept under the resin and resin combinations. For example, jalap, balsam, and so on. Then the vitamins and hormones. So these vitamins and hormones, they are present in the different parts of different plants. So all such type of plants containing the vitamins and hormones, they are grouped together and placed under the vitamins and hormones. For example, the yeast, then the another is the liver, cod liver oil, and so on. Then proteins and enzymes. For example, casein, then the gelatin, and so on. So these are present in so such type of crude drugs, they are placed under the proteins and the enzymes. So thus here these are the different chemical constituents. By considering this, the crude drugs, these are classified like the glycosides, alkaloids, tannins, volatile oils, lipids, carbohydrates, resins and resin products or resin combinations, vitamins and hormones, proteins and enzymes. So thus here, if we see here, all the crude drugs which consists of the specific active principle or chemical constituents, they are grouped under the titles on the basis of which chemical constituents they are present in that crude drug. So this is about the chemical classification. Then the next type of classification is the pharmacological classification, or is also called as therapeutic classification of crude drugs. Therapeutic classification of crude drugs. So here, in this type of classification, as the name indicates, pharmacological or the therapeutic classification, it means the crude drugs, when they are used to cure the diseases, to cure what type of cure disease, so on that basis that crude drugs are classified. Say for example, the castor oil, such type of drugs which are used as a laxative. So all these are placed under the laxative or the purgatives. So like that, the crude drugs, these are classified. It means that crude drug, for what purpose or to cure what type of disease, that crude drugs are used, on the basis of it they are classified. For example, the drugs acting on the gastrointestinal disease. Drugs acting on gastrointestinal disease. So there are so many drugs present in the nature. It may be of plant origin, may be of animal origin, or may be of mineral origin. So all the drugs which are used to cure the gastrointestinal diseases, they are placed under this title, that is the drugs acting on gastrointestinal diseases. Then the another title, that is drugs acting on the cardiovascular diseases. Cardiovascular diseases. So many drugs, they are used for the cardiac disease or for the heart diseases. All such type of drugs, these are placed under the cardiovascular diseases. Then the drugs which are acting on central nervous system. So the drugs which are used on the disease of the central nervous system. So such drugs, all these are placed under this title, that is the drugs acting on the central nervous system. Like that, the drugs which are used for the autonomous nervous system, they are placed under this title. So thus here, if we see the drugs which are used to cure what type of disease, so on that basis that drugs, they are classified and they are named as the gastrointestinal disease drugs, cardiovascular disease drugs, and central nervous system disease drug, and so on. So this is the second type of the classification of the crude drug, that is the pharmacological or the therapeutic classification of the crude drug. And next is the chemotaxonomical classification of crude drugs. Chemotaxonomical classification. So as the name indicates, chemo means chemical, taxonomy means taxonomical. So here the each plant or plant part, maybe the animal or animal part, and minerals, They consist of the specific chemical content or the active principle or chemical constituents. And so here the that is chemical nature, that is chemical constituent, it is related to the taxonomy of that plant or animal. So on that basis the crude drugs, they are classified. So here these two things they are considered, that is the chemical constituents and the taxonomical rank of that crude drug. It may be from the plant or animal origin, they are considered, and by considering these two things, these crude drugs, they are classified. It is known as the chemotaxonomical classification. So this here today we saw about these three types of classification, that is the chemical classification, second is the pharmacological or therapeutic classification, and third one is the chemotaxonomical classification of crude drugs. So this here there are different methods of classification of crude drugs which are used by the pharmacist for the classification. So this here, this is about the classification of the crude drugs. Now here I am going to conclude. Thank you very much.